the messages between Iran and the United States. And here is what, from Iranian side, we've learned, because unfortunately, whatever we hear from Donald Trump and his administration, I don't know, we cannot trust, because they're trying to twist the things, they're trying to manipulate. But at least we have the Iranian side talking. They, what they're saying to us is that Iran, the talks or whatever is happening, the messages they're sending to the United States and the United States sending to Iran is focused on ending war, not the Strait of Hormuz, not the Iranian nuclear program. And ending war, it means that the United States has to do something with Israel and with the case of Lebanon. It's not just about Iran and the United States. Are we going to pass the first step to get to the second step and the third step? Is that possible from what we've seen so far?
Well, as you said, this is almost trying to square the circle. And because Trump needs a success in the war he started, and because of his ego, because of probably also internal pressure within the U.S. Not necessarily administration, but let's say institutions, because you have people who are not part of the administration, such as Lindsey Graham, for instance, who and others who hate Iran. And again, this is not new. We are part of this bipartisan issue regarding Iran, China, Israel, and things like this. So this is the U.S. system make a lot of pressure against Trump. In fact, Trump would have been much better inspired not to start this war, because now he has trapped himself into a situation where he lies sitting between two chairs. On the one hand, those Lindsey Graham and others who want him to continue the war, who they don't even know exactly what they want to achieve, but suddenly want to destroy Iran. That's certainly one thing. And you have the reality of the market. And the reality of the market is twofold. You have first the international market that is affected by the price of oil. And that's not just because of Strait of Hormuz. It's also because of all the oil infrastructure that you may have in the GCC countries that are under the threat of being destroyed if the war resumes. Remember that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, and others were part of the aggressors. And therefore, as long as we have a state of war between Iran and those countries, all these oil facilities might be destroyed. And I just mentioned here the oil facilities, but you may have other facilities that may affect also international trade. I mean, even the ports, for instance, seaports that may be destroyed and may prevent the export of other products than oil, such as sulfur, urea, and others for fertilizer and things like this, aluminum and others. So the fact that the U.S. started this war endangered not simply the region, but also the international trade on very specific and very strategic material. That's and second, you have the U.S. Economy, because I mean, and that's also a collateral damage from the international economy, because the price of oil will affect the U.S. in a lot of different ways. I mean, the energy is basically embedded in any kind of product you buy, whether you buy a cell phone, a car, or even chocolate. Energy goes into this price because on transportation, this also based on manufacture and all that. Meaning that Trump is now sitting between those two chairs: war or the or peace, if you want, which is which is countered by a lot of people within the U.S., and war with the danger of having a worse, even worsening economy. and and there is a very important factor as well, that is his ego. He started a war and he's a winner. He's the one who wins everything, and suddenly now he realizes that he's back to square one. He has not gained anything. He has antagonized his most precious allies in the Middle East. He has led Israel to destruction. He has led Israel to international and worldwide despise, because this attack, this unprovoked, unjustified attack against Iran, has added to all the war crimes that Israel has done so far. And all that, if you draw the line, you will see that we are largely below zero in terms of results. And the only thing he could save or salvage from an agreement is a good deal. But what is a good deal for him? It cannot be. And so this is a situation where whatever he does, he will be in a bad position. He has just to choose between the bad and the worst position. That's what he is. So we are in this situation, and that's the reason why it will be so difficult to craft an agreement. Because on the other hand, Iran, as we have said many times, Iran is fighting for an existential threat. Iran understands that if the conditions are not set definitively, that means that if we don't settle this conflict once for all today, this will resume. And even if, I would even dare to say that even if Iran settled this conflict with the US, my view is that there is absolutely no guarantee that Israel will not try to resume it at a later stage. Meaning that Iran needs to have even more that it would have required or requested before, because it needs guarantees, not simply a signature, but also guarantees and safeguards so that it doesn't restart. That means a commitment by Israel, and that will be very hard to get because Israel has never abidden by any commitment they made in the past, starting in 1947, not 48, because 1947 Israel didn't exist, but they never let's say implement or I don't have the word is missing now. They never managed to abide by their own commitment, and that's the problem. And Iran knows that, and every people in the region, including Lebanon, and that's the reason also why Iran wants to include Lebanon in that, because obviously this is Israel is a regional problem as such. And that's where we are. So I don't expect to have a resolution. In addition, we have also to say Iran. We have said that many times. Time works for Iran. They are not under pressure. Of course, if you have a resumption of strikes against Iran, they will certainly suffer. But since their fight is existential, they are ready to go into this risk, and because what is at stake is much higher than even a number of human life. That's the problem. And Trump has put Iran in this situation. Now I don't see any other alternative for the US than just accept that it has been defeated and to accept the conditions of Iran, because otherwise we'll continue this crisis.
Colonel, the complexity of the issue between Israel and Lebanon is part of this problem. And we've seen various footages coming out of Lebanon using drones and hitting the targets in southern part of Lebanon, in Israel, and the new footages show that they're using thermal cameras, to hit Israeli soldiers.
Mhm.
This is new for Israel, in my opinion. This is not, we haven't seen these sort of footages before. This shows how the reality of the war is changing between Israel and Lebanon.
Well, not only there, because I mean, all that in fact derives from the evolution or development of technologies regarding the drones technology, and you have miniaturized optical systems and things like this. So we have to say the conflict in Ukraine has, in fact, provided a kind of a test ground for such a technology, and Hezbollah is profiting from that. In addition to that, thermal technology used to be extremely expensive 40 years ago or even 20 years ago. Today, it's extremely affordable. You find it in your cell phone or almost. So um, there is no wonder that you have this technology arriving on a battlefield with Hezbollah today. The thing is that, in fact, the situation in Lebanon is not complex. You may have a difficult, we have probably difficulty to have the right overview on the battlefield because the Israelis don't communicate much. And the Hezbollah can only communicate what it can in order not to endanger its own situation. So we have only a partial view on the battlefield. But by and large, the Israelis are experiencing now in Lebanon exactly what they experienced in 2006 with other means, with other weapons, but in the same, they are countering exactly the same fierce resistance that they encountered in 2006. The thing is that the Hezbollah is, again, it's a resistance organization. Hezbollah doesn't fight in Israel. I mean, they attack with missiles or artillery. They attack the logistics of Israel, or some command post. But you don't have Hezbollah fighters fighting on the territory of Israel because, again, there is no claim over the Israeli territory. The Hezbollah has only claims over territory, Lebanese territory, and therefore they fight on their own territory. That's where we have a lot of fallacies circulating about this conflict. There's absolutely no reason, no justification, no motives for Israel to be in Lebanon. Zero. Zilch. And that's the point. And the Lebanese know that. They have experienced several invasion or attempts of invasion in the last 40 years, and therefore now they understand how the Israeli work and all that. Now the thing is that Israel is, if you want to invade a country, and that's, by the way, it would be exactly the same problem if the US would like to have a land operation in Iran. By the way, that just shows the thing. It's easy to go and bomb people with aircraft. Or even missiles. It's very easy. I mean, it has its own difficulties, but in essence, it's easy to claim kind of a success when you bomb people from far away.
Yeah,
It's not
specifically when the country doesn't have the air defense system, which is the case
exactly,
in Lebanon.
especially, absolutely, absolutely. It becomes a total different story when you start to send soldiers, infantry, because if you want to take a territory, you have to occupy it. Of course, you can raise the country, the villages and all that from far away, and the Israeli know how to do that. But eventually, if they want to take the territory, they have to take it and to hold it. And that's where the problem comes, because the Hezbollah fighters are seasoned fighters. They defend their country. They know why they fight. Well, I'm not sure the Israelis know why they fight. That's probably some are indoctrinated enough, but most of them understand that they are not in their own country, while the Hezbollah fights for its own country, and that's makes a huge difference, and we see that, and as we had in Gaza, by the way, it's exactly the same thing. Yes, the Israelis had a technical and technological superiority, but they had not the determination. I mean, they had the staff, general staff had the determination, but the fighters themselves, we saw that. Well, it's easy to kill a kid. This is easy. That they can do, but to confront a real fighter, that's where the problem starts. And that's exactly what the Israelis are experiencing in South Lebanon. And so, for that reason, and by the way, we are also in a case because, of course, when you talk about Gaza, you have a although the Gaza case is extremely clear from an international law point of view, it's very clear. Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank are Palestinian territory. It's a state that is recognized by the UN. So it's not a fantasy state, it is a state. So when the Israelis invade Gaza, they invade a foreign country, period, clear. And this country has the right to defend itself. And even if the Israelis were surrounding Gaza, trying to keep this Gaza as a huge concentration camp, because that's in effect what it was, this is considered as occupation even if you had not physical presence of Israeli soldiers. And that's also, this is defined by international law, meaning that all the operations of Israel within Gaza are against the international law. Okay. But some people may still argue that Gaza is not part of Palestine, whatever. You may have this. Well, in Lebanon, this discussion doesn't exist because Lebanon is a country, a clear country for everybody. Everybody recognizes Lebanon as a country. And the presence of Israeli soldiers in Lebanon is illegal, regardless of how you consider the case. It's illegal, period. Therefore, not only the Israelis encounter a very strong, very fierce defense from the Hezbollah, but at the same time, and the international community recognize, although it's also very interesting to see that there is very little reaction, especially from Europe, to the invasion of Lebanon by Israel. But in reality, this is a case this is exactly the same case as Israel attacking Iran. It's the same thing, basically. The problem, again, we are back to this situation that nobody dares to criticize or even condemn Israel for what it does. And that's the reality, is that you have governments in Europe, the French government, notably, the US government, definitely, the British government as well, and the government in Germany, who are under influence. Period. These governments are under influence. And that's the reason why they don't dare to use, even to use the international law to condemn or criticize Israel. So that's, as again, I'm not saying that Israel should not exist or things like that, but as what I have discussed many times with you, uh, especially when it came to the situation in Gaza, as long as Israel doesn't behave according to the international law, I mean, that makes this country illegitimate. You see, this is the we expect a country as, and by the way, in we have to remember that Israel was created in 1948, but it entered the United Nations in 1949. And the condition for Israel to enter the UN as a member was that Israel had to commit itself to respect the international law. That was a condition for the Israeli membership to the UN. This is, to my knowledge, this is the only country where people required that, because at that time, everybody in the UN, in the UN Security Council, at least at that time, understood that Israel had not, in 1 year of existence, and even before, if we can say what happened just before independence, but in 1 year of existence, Israel had never complied with international law. Therefore, they imposed to Israel the condition of making an official declaration in which Israel accept to respect the international law in order to be member of the UN. Why don't we come back to this declaration today is, to me, a mystery. I mean, a half mystery, because we understand the pressure and the influence Israel has in most Western countries. But in fact, everybody knew that at that time. And so far, Israel has not. I mean, if you see the number of resolution condemning, I think no country has been more condemned by the United Nations than Israel. There are more than 100 resolution condemning the actions of Israel. And it's not condemning Israel as a state, as such, because it exists or because they are Jews. It condemns Israel because it behaves badly. This is the behavior that is condemned. And that is something that Israel has never managed to correct within 80 years of existence. And that, I think, is tragic, especially for all the victims, first of all, but it's also tragic for Israel itself. And that's exactly the reason why we see today, in a recent poll, that Israel is today the most hated country in the world. And there is no mystery for that. And I would say even it's logic. It's logic, because it doesn't behave, it refuses to behave according to international humanitarian law. It behaves like the worst of the dictatorship we had in the past in Europe. How can you expect from that? Again, I think this is something that Israel should realize. Seems to me extremely important that even Western countries, as you do with the old good friends, they would advise Israel to say, well, guy, if you want us to support you, you need to behave. And once you behave properly, then we'll continue to support you. If you don't behave, how can I support you? That should be the kind of that's exactly what you would say to a good friend. The question is whether Israel is our real friend or not. This is probably the reason why nobody does this, because nobody considers Israel as a friend. There's probably an explanation. But the fact of the matter is that we should see more influence from the so-called Western civilized world, whatever that means, but in order to bring Israel into, not back, because it has never been in the path of the international law, but to bring Israel into the path of international law. I think that's a key think to the survival of Israel. If Israel doesn't understand that, it will not survive. Definitely not.